learn here. What is going on with Black English? And what does that mean? And how complicated is it? Ooh, fun video ahead here.
The language variety indigenous to the United States, developed by Black people who are the descendants of formerly enslaved Africans. That's more complex and more sophisticated than the academic English that we all learned in the classroom. Stick with me on this one. I recently gave a keynote speech at the American Association of Electronic Reporters and Transcribers, where I talked about accents and non-standard dialects and all the challenges that those pose for transcription, and especially for human transcriptionists who want to be better than AI. And I made that claim. And it seemed to surprise people. And I get it. You're probably still on, wait, is he talking about Ebonics? And sort of, I'll explain that too. But whatever you call it, a lot of people have the stereotype that it's lazy, that it's bad English, and that it flouts or completely disregards the entire concept of grammar. And that's wrong. That could not be further from the truth, which is a whole lot weirder than you probably know. So stick around and I'll explain why exactly I say Black English, African American language, Ebonics, is more grammatically complex than you might think, and more sophisticated than it's given credit for. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, and I'm finna blow your mind. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, and this is Language Jones.
I want to pause here real quick. I just want to kind of give it, he might give examples here, but I can give you like one, I think one really good, fun example here. If I can.
He's kind of looking.
So there's a trailer for a great mockumentary film called Snow on the Bluff. I'll skip all that here, but the important part, relevant to right now, is just seeing this line said right here.
Government fucked up, so it stop how I'm living now.
See, it's either, this how this shit go in the street. Either you gonna be the one that doing it, or it gonna get done to your ass. You got to have one of them ways.
Either you the one doing it, or it's gonna get done to your ass. Beautifully said.
I promise you this is not a gimmick. What you probably know as Ebonics and what linguists call African American English or African American language, or sometimes Black English, the Black ones anyway, is way more grammatically complex and subtle and nuanced and, yes, sophisticated than people think. But that's not the reputation it has. So first, why the reputation? And then I'll tell you all about the more complex grammar, which is really cool. Before I continue, I just want to add that I'm working on a book right now about how Black English has shaped all of American English, but its impact is in many ways invisible or even actively erased. If you're interested in that book, and you should be, please leave me a comment saying so, maybe even ask me what you wish you knew about it. That way, publishers and agents can see how much interest there actually is, and I'm more likely to get it to market. First things first, teeny tiny history lesson. America has a complicated history with race. That's an understatement. Anybody watching this probably knows that what is now the US had hundreds of years of chattel slavery in which Africans, and later their descendants, were enslaved in the American South. And yes, other groups were enslaved and have been throughout history, but in the US, the Irish ran away and then claimed they weren't Irish and nobody could tell. And the indigenous people ran away and then got really good at staying away because they already knew the terrain better. They were here first. Slavers very quickly settled on bringing Africans who, if they even survived the trip, were in a foreign land, stood out wherever they went, and were thrown in with people who didn't speak the same languages. And that's kind of an important part here. You have lots of people who are native speakers of Bantu languages, but who are forced to communicate using either the plantation Creole or some form of English. Now's not the time to go into all the detail about the linguistic arguments about the genesis of African American English, and in fact, we can never really know because we have insufficient and wildly unreliable records. It's a hugely contentious issue in linguistics, and that unreliability of records is kind of the
I'm so happy you said that. On God, I am so happy that, like, bro, who was telling the story, right? Good shit there. Good call out.
Hugely contentious issue in linguistics. And that unreliability of records is kind of the point. The US has a mainstream culture that stereotypes Black people as lazy and unintelligent, and it comes in large part out of our history of slavery and Jim Crow. Unintelligent is a justification for forcing people to do manual labor they don't want to do, and lazy is one way of looking at their resisting literal slavery. You go pick tobacco in Maryland in June and get back to me about how enthusiastic you are about doing that all day, every day. Until after the Civil War, Black Americans were denied even basic education, albeit with some exceptions, and it wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that they were guaranteed equal and not separate access to education, at least on paper. But also, we tend to overstate the importance of formal education and academic norms around the right way to speak. Any language you could name, including the fancy educated ones like Latin, were developed by illiterate people. Literally, since language change is driven by kids. So, over the last 400 years, Black Americans have developed a distinct language variety. Not all Black Americans, obviously, and in fact, more than one variety. Gullah and Black English are not the same. Ebonics actually historically referred to all the different language varieties that came out of the New World contact between West African languages and European colonial languages. So technically, Brazilian Portuguese, Haitian Creole, and Gullah are all Ebonics too. But the point is that it is its own distinct language variety. Maybe a dialect of English, maybe a decreolized Creole. As I've said in other videos, it has rules. This means that it's not just breaking the rules of classroom English. It's a language variety with highly regular, highly systematic rules. The rules are just different from classroom English. And that's where we get to my claim that it's more complicated and sophisticated. I'm not saying the dudes on the corner outside in Harlem where I live hanging out and smoking are necessarily more sophisticated by our cultural standards than the Ivy League professors teaching down the street at Columbia in their tweed or whatever. But I am absolutely saying that their language use is grammatically more sophisticated than the English being taught to those Ivy League legacy students in their first year writing classes. So hear me out. A lot of you like my channel for language learning and linguistics content about other languages. Many know that I'm big on thinking about how languages treat tense, aspect, and mood. If you haven't watched my videos about these, all you really need to know is that we abuse the word tense in English to refer to all three. To grossly oversimplify, tense actually refers to whether some shape of the verb indicates when something happens. Aspect indicates whether it's thought of as ongoing or completed, and mood refers to something that indicates in some way how the speaker feels about what they're talking about. Some languages have only tense or only aspect. So for instance, Mandarin Chinese has aspect but not tense. Biblical Hebrew had aspect and not tense. Modern Hebrew has tense and aspect is a bit iffy. In English, we have modal verbs like you should do this or you must do that, but other languages can modify basically anything, so you have things like the subjunctive that indicates doubt about the proposition. It also does other stuff that's more structural because languages are messy. So the point here is when I say Black English is more complicated and sophisticated, what I mean is that the grammatical system of tense, aspect, and mood in Black English makes more and more nuanced distinctions. Where it gets confusing is that it does so with basically the same words, just used differently. Dr. Arthur Spears calls these camouflage constructions. So let me give some examples. The most famous in linguistics.
Okay, I'm glad, because I was going to say here, I was going to give you some examples, but I'm pretty sure he's going to give some because it's a kind of a lot in the abstract to keep up with here. But this is where it all comes back together. So just like, you know, we'll take it slow. We'll take it slow.
Is what is sometimes called habitual B. I actually don't really like the name and prefer the less used invariant B because it has more functions than marking habituality, but that is a main one. So if I say it be that way, that doesn't mean the same thing as it is that way. When you add the word sometimes, both end up meaning the same thing, but it be that way on its own has built in that it is that way sometimes and not necessarily right now. These can lead to miscommunications where people who don't speak Black English think that they understand what's being said, but they're missing some of the nuance. And instead of recognizing that, they usually think that the Black English speaker is just using bad grammar. So if I say, I'm going to call him at work, and my friend says, nah, he don't be at work, I might understand the social communicative function of that speech act and choose not to call him, but I might miss the nuance. He isn't usually at work, so it's probably not a good bet, but my friend is not asserting that they know he isn't at work right now. In fact, it could be the case that he don't usually be at work, but in an unforeseen turn of events, he there right now. Did you notice, by the way, that you can optionally delete the present indicative form of to be, just like in Hebrew, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, and a ton of other languages? Habitual be isn't just about the habits, but can also be about generic states. Dr. Lisa Green calls the trickier abstract form bicycle sentences after an example from a famous interview where the speaker said something along the lines of some of them be big and some of them be small. This doesn't mean that each bicycle is usually big but sometimes small, like the magic school bus. And invariant B is just the tip of the iceberg. There's stressed been, which indicates remote perfect. You know how saying I have been in English means it started in the past and it's relevant to the present, especially in like British English? Remote been usually indicates completion in the distant past, and relevance to the present. So if I say, I've been told you that, it doesn't mean I've been telling you that. It means I told you that a long time ago, dummy. Linguists did an informal study of white school teachers in Harlem in the 1970s and asked teachers, if your student says they been did their homework, is it completed or are they still working on it? And the majority of the teachers got it wrong. Using the dialect kids speak at home to teach them literacy and then using the ability to read and write to teach them academic English was actually the proposal that kicked off the Oakland Ebonics controversy. Black English also has many more modal verbs than classroom English, although many of you might be familiar with them from social media or from them slowly being adopted into the mainstream. There's the future modal finna, originally from the very southern fixing oneself to do something. In the South, everybody uses it. In the North, it was historically only speakers of Black English, though that's changing. There's trina, which does not mean trying to. I'm going to say that again. Trina does not mean trying to.
I want to pause here so bad, but my boy's cooking right now, so I'm just gonna let him go. Just know here, I'm already like, ooh, I'm already like, yeah.
Future modal that indicates intent, not attempt. That's how you can get a question like, when are you trying to leave? The same is the case for bouta. And there's further reduction of gonna to gon and on and. And all of these have different gradations of meaning when it comes to time. And not only does Black English have more grammatical distinctions in terms of time and aspect, but you can combine.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure y'all
to go and on and. And
God, he's so fast in these edits here. So finna, tryna, bouta, gonna, but which is separate from gon, on, and.
And all of these have different gradations of meaning when it comes to time. And not only does Black English have more grammatical distinctions in terms of time and aspect, but you can combine them. So you could have been gone there and you been could have gone there have different implications. Leave me a comment, by the way, if you think you can explain the difference. So what you have is a very robust grammatical system, but one that's built in part by using slightly different versions of the same words to do very different things. This has a few repercussions. First, because the words all sound like words other English speakers use, a lot of people completely fail to recognize they're being used to do something different. You'll almost certainly see this in the comments on this video. People who don't speak Black English will assume they know what is meant and not realize that they're shoehorning a different grammatical construction into one they already feel familiar with. Second, that process combined with stereotypes just kind of erase that Black English exists. If you think I just talk lazy or have bad grammar, then you won't be attuned to the difference in meaning when I say, he don't be over there. You might think a sentence like, he ain't working there today, but he be working there, is contradictory gibberish. You might not recognize that Oscar Gamble's famous quote, they don't think it be that way, but it do, is both grammatically correct for that dialect and perfectly clear. They don't think it's usually that way, but it is usually that way. And lastly, because the first 2 points, people might get it wrong and not realize it. I mentioned this in my video on the word woke, and I've also mentioned this in interviews, but it's totally possible to get Black English wrong, and plenty of people do. Sometimes it's Russian bots attempting to stoke racial tensions in the US on Twitter. Sometimes it's comedians using phrases they think sound funny. Sometimes it's corporate ad execs mashing up everything they think is teen speak. Babies on fleek. Okay, but my bae do though. And speakers of Black English will immediately know that you're faking it, just like most of you would notice immediately if I will start mix-upping my tenses in regular the English. That's what you sound like to Black Americans when you be saying, today's weather be like sunshine. The thing about language and linguistic ideologies, though, is that it's never really about the people. So if Black English had less tense aspect and mood marking, people would say it's because those people are intellectually inferior and they can't do all the grammar that we sophisticates do. But when it has more, even if I can convince you of that, it's easy for people to keep the disparagement, but flip the reason. Those people are intellectually inferior, and so their language doesn't have the elegant simplicity of ours. To quote a famous speaker of Black English who you probably don't think of that way, you can't win.
And you can win, child. You can't be given. And you can't get out of the game.
You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game. There's a lot more that I could say about this. It's so much more that it could fill a book. So if you're interested in that book, definitely drop a comment. I've already written chapters about the history of Black English, regional dialects and homegrown flavor, how racism and the culture wars have shaped the academic study of it in weird ways, and an entire chapter on just all the memes. So if you want to hear about the time a middle-aged white guy blurted out, "Bye, Felicia," to a Black linguist friend of mine, and what happened next, you're going to want to get a copy of this book. If you like what I'm doing with the channel, you can support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/languagejones or right here on YouTube with super thanks and super chat. I've got upcoming videos on Duolingo.
Bro, powerful stuff here. So here you go. Here's a link to the video. Make sure you drop a like. Spitting. I'm fitting to go to the store. I'm a catch you later. You know, and sometimes the spelling will be a little bit more obscure too, because you know we're, you know, if you say like, I guess I don't know how you would spell this here. I'ma catch you later. Sometimes it's spelled I'ma like this if you're like younger or whatever here, but like, you know, obviously, you know, it gets a little bit nutty, you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely, I love that he brought up here the fitna versus trina versus gonna versus gone, etc., etc. Yeah, it gets a little bit crazy when you really try to like sit back and study it and break it down, because it, you know, usually when this is all happening, it's happening really, really fast, and you're in like it's being spoken like so fast here. Yeah, if I can here now, actually, you can kind of go back. Let's actually go back to the example that I was going to throw y'all here, right? The or the one that I showed here, which was
He's kind of looking at us, right?
See what it has
Fuck
to
it, I'm
say.
gonna talk to him. Hey!
Take a piece of bread out the mouths of my till. Government fucked up, so it stopped how I'm living now.
See, it's either, this how this shit go in the street. Either you gonna be the one that doing it, or it gonna get done to your ass. It got to have one of them ways.
Yeah, you know, either you the one doing it, or it gon' get dunked to your ass. You know, and obviously, like, you can just say here that this is like just a lack of capability to express it in explicit, correct English. But obviously, I think everyone can kind of get here that like, dunt. I guess I would interpret it as like a verb form of like done, but like, you know, explicitly. What's the word here? I don't know. Harsh or confrontational. But yeah, you can see here that like the capability, like you don't misunderstand. Like you clearly know what he's getting at. It's just being done in a very, you know, I don't know the word here would be, like spicy way, one could say here. But yeah, you know, just go to your local barbershop and you'll hear shit like that all the time here. Yeah, he knows what he's talking about, and even more importantly, you're able to understand what he's getting at here. So yeah, that's either you the one fucking or you the one getting fucked would be a different way, but it hits a little bit different when it's like that.
See, it's either, this how this shit go in the street. Either you gonna be the one that doing it, or it gonna get done to your ass. It got to have one of them ways.
So yeah, really, really fun stuff there. Really, really good stuff. Yeah, that was Language Jones. I should actually go back here and actually give him a fat like, or a fat subscribe actually. So Language Jones, y'all. And I'm sure there's more video. That was already like a banger thing. Oh my god, dude. He's got videos on Skibidi Toilet. Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to go over here and add it to the watch backlog here. We already got it in there. And you know those comments are, look at the comments to view ratio. That's really good. 10K comments. All of oh my god. You good? You okay? You good? Leave me alone. You good? Don't worry. You good? You are good. Oh my god, bro. Yeah, there's a lot going on here for sure. And I think sometimes whenever y'all see me bring it up, it's got a soft spot with me because if I can here for a second, I have a complicated relationship with the whole thing. Again, in middle school, I was told I wasn't black enough from the black peers. And so I felt shame for how I was speaking. My grandmother was a teacher and was like, you're not gonna speak that way to me like that. So I had to like, you know, tighten it up a little bit. And, you know, she was like, don't even use the word ain't a word, that kind of shit. And so, I was conflicted. My grandmother, you know, she don't play no games. She don't take no shit. So I was like, all right, yes, ma'am. I would tighten up. in class, I wanted to fit in, and so I admit I would deliberately dumb it down and try to code harder with how they were speaking. That comes to mind for sure. I never took it as antagonistic. As you already know here, I've covered this before, like as far back as like 8 years ago, where I was like, yeah, language is fluid, and like even my like relationship with like the word nigga is like a very different thing. Maybe unconventional. Some people, some black people tend to see it all as like, you know, hard R and A and soft A. It's all the same thing. I think it's a bit more complicated than that, and that like obviously like you got, I'm gonna be real here. You got like SoCal Hispanics, New York Asians, and then black folks all using this shit anyway. Don't get it twisted here. You even got as recently as like I can think of an example. You got like Fat Joe, who's clearly not black, saying that, you know, yeah, like we use nigga all the time and whatnot. So yeah, it's complicated. The point being is that it's fluid, and like what the malice and the intent behind its usage clearly inspires how it gets used these days here. You know, I see it more as a term of endearment on my behalf than I'd see soft A used as like a, you get the idea, right? So I've already had like a very a colorful relationship with language altogether. So for me, it's a really soft spot for me. And so whenever you see me like, you know, quote these things, like I've quoted with my GameStop stories, you know, how, you know, I'm never being racist. I'm always like, I'm quoting exactly what I heard and what was said when I was working at GameStop, or when I'm at a barbershop or whatever. You know, exactly whatever I said in the past, exactly what it sounds like. So there's no exaggeration at all here. You know what I'm saying? So like, it is a soft spot for me. I think actually the language is beautiful all around here. So I could probably make this up more about me, but it's kind of, you know, I think the topic is really, 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 really fun. Also, I'm sorry. I know the green screen's kind of crazy here. That's now you can see here like why it's all stupid and whatnot. But you know, when I go to the other camera, you'll see here how that works. He tells a story in one video of how racists would take African language studies at a university he was at. They did it as a joke, assuming the course would be easy, and they were shook every time when the languages were incredibly complex. Got they ass, bruh. Got they ass. Hey, but you know what though? At least he took it, man. If African American history was like even like something that was not paywall to higher education, man, we'd be better tomorrow. More accepting, less racism, dare I say more unironically woke. Yeah, that'd be great, man. I don't even think this is not even coming from an area of hate. I'm not even saying like, I'm not advocating that anyone who's like racist needs to sit down and learn. I think the truth would set you free. I think you are who you are, but it's based off the facade that, you know, insert lie X, right? A meritocracy is real, or that your social studies that you learn, which was some like Texas Board of Education garbage anyway, just literally white apologist propaganda, is garbage and bullshit, and it's not really how the shit really fucking works. So yeah, you know, I think in pursuit of your true self, learning that truth, it's uncomfortable. I'm not saying that you, in this case, anonymous white person, are evil, but I think if it would be a lot less evil, a lot more virtues towards the greater good of tomorrow, less bullshit really here if there was more African American history taught, honestly, at least in USA, because then we can kind of get past the whole point here, because right now what we're stuck on is the whole like, you know, look where we're stuck right now. You ask the average normie, what was the Civil War over, and they're gonna say states' rights. They're not even gonna get to. They're already gonna pivot from the uncomfortable part of it, where it was like, you know, it was over slavery. And it was a bureaucracy. It was states' rights. Okay, yeah, all right, bro. So you can't even get them to even agree on that shit anyway. So it's like, you kind of get the idea where I'm going with this now here. Like, if it was just more accessible, and I always go back here and say here, that's like to me, that's like why I guess here, if I were to call it, I don't know if the right term is white privilege, but like my best example I can go to here is like white privilege is that African American history is a paywalled college elective. Man, and you know, and I don't know. I've never told someone IRL this before. Sorry, IRL before, because I've never had like a contentious convo to like, I guess, to get to that point. Or I've never had someone in like Louisiana where I'm like having this kind of conversation, because why would I? They're all normies. And I get to like be this open about like how I really feel. But you know, that would be what I would say. Or I have said in an online space, but IRL, you all know, you have these kind of combos IRL. You got to tiptoe really lightly. And usually it's nothing. I'm like, you have to combat so many preconceived, I would say like manosphere, right-wing talking points. It's you know, you're spending more time debunking boringly false shit than actually getting to the part that excites you. You're stuck playing fact check like 10 doors behind you before you can open the door that gets to the part you actually want to talk about. So that's why I don't really have them too often, because like, I mean, also it's like one normie. What are you gonna do, right? It's you and a normie having an IRL combo. Are you gonna really change their mind? I don't know. You can only confront their core values or their core beliefs so hard in one combo and have them not want to punch you in the face. You know what I mean? It's like I'd have to like tackle 3 of the 10 things that you already believe that are completely incorrect, these falsehoods, and I gotta like tackle the remaining 7 over the course of like, I don't know, like separate other conversations for you to process what I'm saying, you know? So this is why, by extension, you know, political talk during Thanksgiving is exhausting. Politics and family is exhausting. You know, this is why I put my white man on when I'm around, when I was around Venom's family the first time, because I already knew what I was going to get into there, but thankfully they were cool, and that wasn't really nothing. So, you know, you get the idea, right? Frederick Douglass is the greatest American, and his book should be required reading in every American history course. Dude, great. My boy Scott on the my boy woke. I love it. Listen, no bias here. That would be amazing. I too wish that Frederick Douglass's teachings or in writings were like standard. I think that'd be a really good spot. You know, let's hear from the African slave who who learned to write. Let's hear from him, actually. Let's not hear from all the apologists, because I already know what their agenda is. Let's get out of here with that one. Have you seen the Checkmate Lincoln Knights series on YouTube?